Good morning. I'm so excited to be here. If you've been to South Hills before, you may be thinking, that is not the normal guy that is supposed to be here at this time. And you are absolutely correct. If I haven't gotten the chance to meet you yet, my name is Mariah, and I actually am our youth director here at South Hills, where I get to be a part of SHS. I don't know how many of you know what SHS is, but it's my favorite thing ever. All of us know. And it's for all of our 7th through 12th grade students on Wednesday nights. We're on break right now. It's kind of sad. But we're coming back on January 15th. And it's one of my favorite things ever. And you guys are a big part of why SHS gets to happen. So before we jump in today, I just want to thank you all from the bottom of our heart for making SHS possible, by trusting us with your students, and by your giving goes to SHS, and all of our leaders that participate. So thank you guys for making SHS possible. You should give yourself a round of applause for that. This month, we are going through a series called A Thrill of Hope, and we are in week 3 right now. If you weren't here for any of the other weeks, it's totally fine. You will still be able to follow along just as great today. And if you want to re-listen, we're all over Apple Podcasts, Spotify, other places you get podcasts. But the title of my message today is called Less is More. And I know a lot of you in here are parents, a lot of you have kids, but I do not have any kids. And you may be thinking, thank God, I feel like you're a kid. It'd be really concerning if you did. And that is a very fair assessment. And even though I don't have kids, I was the youngest of 3 kids. I was always the youngest cousin, so I wasn't really I wasn't really around a lot of kids in my family. I was always the littlest one. But now, as an adult, I love being around little kids. And it's not because they're cute and fun. It's because they're so endlessly hilarious. And they're not trying to be. It's just that at any given moment, I have no idea what they're going to say. And they have this superpower where any innocent setting, just a peaceful place, an enjoyable experience, can be imbued and instilled with so much mortification when they say something so embarrassing. Like when your 6-year-old niece and you are standing at the Target checkout line, and she's like, wow, that man's really fat. And you're like, oh my God. Oh, wow, why does her face look like that? And you're like, stop using your face. We need to shut it down. This is all bad. And it's so embarrassing and so awkward, but it's so much worse when it's directed at you. And my 7-year-old nephew once looked me dead in the eye in cold blood and said, Auntie, you look like birds don't like you. I don't even know what that means. I don't even know. I know I'm hurt by it, but I don't know why. Like, it's not nice, but I can't. Like, how do you know? How do you know from looking at my face that birds don't like me? So I returned him to his father. And the more you try to, silence these kids when they're saying these things that are so uncomfortable, the more it just strengthens their resolve. Because they're confused why we're all ignoring what is so glaringly obvious to them. They're like, the person is kind of fat. You do look like birds don't like you. I don't know why you're not getting it. And you're like, please, I'm begging you to stop. And then I think they think we're dumb, so they're worried, and then they start educating us by restating the same thing louder several more times, and it just never ends. And it's because, in the mind of kids, everything is super simple. Everything just kind of makes sense. They're like, everything's obvious. This is just how things are. But as adults, it's way more complicated than that. We don't say those things all the time, and we feel embarrassed when these kids do. But it's also kind of sweet and inspiring sometimes when kids just make observations out loud. I don't know if you've ever been driving with your kid or your siblings or your cousins or whatever, and you pass somebody on the side of the street that's holding up a sign, and they're signaling hey, I need food, and you don't clock this. You are thinking about why birds don't like you. You're really not getting over this Target experience. And this kid is just like, can we just go to McDonald's really quick? They're hungry and we're by a McDonald's. And you're like, no, we don't have time. We have to go. I don't want to butt into their life. And they're like, well, we're 10 feet away from a McDonald's. I feel like we're going home. So we're not in a rush. And you're like, I don't know how to share logic with this kid, because for them, it's very obvious. And for us, it feels like, I don't really want to butt into this person's life. I feel like it'd be awkward, and I don't want to be weird, and I don't want to just make them feel uncomfortable or judged or down upon. And honestly, this person probably has way bigger problems than the one listed on the sign. Would me giving them this Happy Meal, would that even help anything? Or I feel like what I have to give isn't enough to make a difference, so I'm just not going to give anything. And there's also another somewhat related voice in our head that's like, what I have to give is not enough, and I am not willing to inconvenience myself long enough to actually do what would be helpful. So no, we're not going to do this. And then you're trying to share this logic with this child, and they're looking at you with dead eyes because they're like, just admit you're a bad person. Just admit. Just say it. I know what needs to be done. I don't know why you're not getting it. It just doesn't work. But we've all kind of been in a situation where we felt compelled to do something, but we're convinced that what we have to give is just not worth giving. And our help is not going to give anyone very much hope at all. Like for you, this might look like when you really wanted to give a compliment to that person. It was like a barista or your friend or your boss, and you're like, I really want to give them this compliment because I mean it. But I don't want to make it weird. I don't want this to be weird, so it's not a big deal. Or maybe you wanted to give money to a cause that you really believed in, but you're like, what I can give to this is not significant enough. It would be weird if I gave this. Or maybe you wanted to give an apology to somebody that you know you hurt, and you're like, I know that they've been waiting for this, and I should apologize, but I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to reopen the wound. I really don't want to say the wrong thing. And then they just feel like, why did you do this to me? This is so much worse than the thing you did. Or maybe you wanted to give someone a gift, but you were worried that they'd read into it and it'd be really awkward. And you're like, I don't want them to think I'm like hitting on them. They're like, it's your mom. Why would they think that? No one would think that. But we have this like unwritten set of rules about what makes an investment worth it. And it's this little voice that says, if I can't give above this line, it's not worth giving. We tell ourselves like, oh, if I had more time and more effort and more energy and less stuff to do all the time, if I had more money, oh my gosh, I would make such a difference. I would really go all in on helping this cause. But I don't. So I'm not going to help. I'm not even going to try because what I have is not enough. And like the bigger the thing is, the more complicated it feels to us. Like sex trafficking, water, like not having access to water, world hunger, joblessness, fatherlessness. I can't make a dent in any of these things in a real way. But like, what if you're wrong? Like, what if that's just not how it actually works? Maybe we're getting it wrong. Like, what if these little things really are a big deal? And these tiny things that we think are insignificant are actually determinants of the direction of some of the most significant stories. Like that small compliment or that like imperfect apology, those 2 hours you gave serving, the $3 you were able to give to that cause you care about, or that Happy Meal that would have taken you like 5 seconds to get. What if they actually do a lot more than we assume they do? And there's actually a story about this in the nativity scene, and I don't know if you know a lot about this story. It involves a lesser-known character in the Bible named Jesus. But there's another character in there that was probably thinking all of these same things. And it starts in Luke 2, verses 1 through 7. It says, at that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All returned to their own ancestral towns to register for the census. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, to whom he was engaged, who was now expecting her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available to them. And how many of us before, like, reading the story or doing, like, just kind of like any study, this is how I pictured the scene, and you can tell me if this is how you did. I always thought this was happening in, like, the middle of the night, and Mary's in labor. We've established I have no kids. I don't know what it's like to be in labor, but it sounds really intense. So she's on a donkey. She's in a lot of pain. Joseph is freaking out. They're just going to every hotel nearby, and everyone's being super mean. They're like, sorry, we're filled. Go have this baby in the street for all we care. Get out of here. It's really tense. Not going well until finally some guy was just like, I guess you can sleep in my barn. Like, you can cuddle a horse or something to stay warm. I don't know. This is all I am willing to give you. But that actually isn't a really accurate picture of what the historical context is telling us. At this point in history, there were no inns, which is very confusing considering he's called the innkeeper. But the word that is often translated to inn actually refers to more of a guest room in people's homes, because in this culture, everyone was expected to have a place to put their guests and their families whenever they came to visit. And at this time, everyone was in town for the census, so nobody had any rooms available. And these people felt bad that they couldn't help. They knew that Mary and Joseph needed help, but they're like, I have nowhere to put you. And at this time, they'd also been there for several days. This was not all at once. Many scholars think that Mary and Joseph had stayed a week before she had the baby. Nonetheless, Joseph frantically searches to find shelter for his family. And finally, someone welcomed him in. But I can only imagine, this man, his guest room is full, but he's like, I have this cave-like space in the back of my house for my 1 to 2 livestock. I could offer them that. That's weird. I shouldn't offer them to do that. They're going to think I'm telling them I think that they're animals. I don't mean that. I don't want them to get offended, but this is all, I should help these people. I guess I'll just offer them this, and I hope that's enough. And it's an interesting problem to be in no matter who you are. That would be really tense. And you're like, I guess you could sleep in my backyard, under my shed. I don't know. But James says this about this action that this man took. It says in James 2:14-20, what good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it's dead and useless. Now, someone may argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds. But I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have any good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. You say you have faith because you believe that there is one God. Good for you. Even the demons believe this, and they tremble in terror. So how foolish. Can't you see that faith without good deeds is useless? And this piece of scripture has the same energy as when you're explaining to a child, no, we're not going to help this person. They're like, just admit you suck. And this is what it feels like. Because James is telling us here, he's like, what you actually believe, not just what you say you believe, but what you actually believe is revealed by what you do, not by what you say. And we hate that because our culture, we love to yap. We love to talk, and no one talks better than we do. We tell people, oh, I feel so bad for you. And I really do feel bad. We wish people well. And we're like, I'll keep you in my thoughts and prayers. You don't pray for them. You forget. It leaves your brain immediately. We do a lot. We post about injustice. We rant about it. We tell everybody, we're like, someone needs to help. Someone should do something. I'm not me, but someone should really help. I'm going to raise awareness for this cause. But the thing we just never will do is to personally inconvenience ourselves to practically help this cause. And what James is saying is the mark of true Christianity isn't how well you talk. It's how well you love people. And love is always a demonstration. We hand people hope with our actions. And you've seen this in your own life in a million ways. Have you ever had someone who's like, I love you, but they're so mean to you all the time? And you're like, I'm not convinced that you do, but it's like it covers up stuff. You can tell people you love them. You can claim that you love people. But if you just say that and then you're actually kind of a jerk, it doesn't really help anyone. What's interesting about what James writes and why this is so important to him, that his main thing is that faith is nothing without action, is because he learned it from his family. He was the brother of Jesus, which I feel like living in the shadow of the Savior of the world would give you some real psychological problems. But I don't know, and I'll never know. But he clearly heard the story a lot growing up from his mom and his dad when they were talking about there was that one night where we got to just stay in that barn, and then we had somewhere to put Jesus in this manger, and it was amazing, and this man just helped us so much. And you know that every time Joseph was like, honey, do you remember when the donkey, and then James rolled his eyes. He's like, I'm so sick of the story. But he heard a lot about other people practically intervening in their lives and how their faith was shown through action. And we don't even know anything about this innkeeper other than it wasn't an inn. We don't even know anything about the man who helped. We don't know if he was a Jew or if he was a Gentile. We don't know what he believed. We don't even know what he said to them. All we know is what he did. And what he did was offer the little thing that he could, the thing that felt so insignificant and almost embarrassing for him to offer because it's all he had. And it changed history. It seemed small and unimportant to him, but we're still talking about it. It was prophesied 1,000 years before Jesus was born that he would be born in a manger surrounded by animals in Bethlehem. So if this man had anything better, if he had like a penthouse or if he had like a really nice setup for them, it actually wouldn't have been as good. He got to be a part of welcoming God incarnate to the world, given the little thing he had. So his little insignificant thing was so much better than anything else he could have given. And this is the key to cultivating hope in our lives and other people's lives. It's that the hopeful help with what they have, despite wishing that they could do something more or something better. And we all kind of do that. We all wish, like, oh, I wish I could give them this or this or this or whatever. But the truth is, like, when I assume that you're not going to want what I have to offer, I'm robbing us both. We both miss out. You never get to have that part that would have maybe been a really significant miracle for you, and I never get to see how hope grows in your life. I never get to see what God does with this one thing I've given and see how he makes it incredible in ways I never could have imagined. Because when we offer God what we have, we don't know what he's going to do with it. Rarely. Have you ever been like, I know exactly what God's doing, and then you were so wrong? And this man in the story, we don't know his name, but he was still mentioned in the story. And it's because everyone matters in this story, because the story matters. Every small piece of the story matters, because what's happening matters. And in truth, I mean, you can't give what you don't have. You can only give what you currently have, not what you wish you had, even though what you wish you had is awesome and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not here. So you're just sad all the time because you're like, I can't do more. It's like, well, you can do something. And I'm curious, like, I have my excuses, and I know you have yours too, but I wonder what would happen if we just ignored them and stopped second-guessing that voice in us that's kind of compelling us to give in some way, that apology, that compliment, that time. Like, the guy in the story is only worth mentioning because he's a footnote in Jesus' story. I lost a page. Pause, sit, pretend like this is a really powerful moment. There's not a lot of pages up here, but I really did get all turned around. Anywho's, the whole story of God is of little things that come together and make a big difference. In God's story, every little bit matters, and that's what we tell you here. We're like, we believe that every little bit matters, whether it's giving your time, serving, whether it's, I don't know, being like taking time to actually practice the things that we're learning. Every little bit forward helps, and it all comes together because we can't do things on our own. And I think, like, it's crazy that we always assume what I have isn't big enough, what I have isn't enough to offer, because God always honors those who simply just give what they can, no matter how tiny, including the thing that you're dismissing in your head right now that God is kind of bringing up, and you're like, not that. Anything else, just not that thing. But I'm curious, like, what if someone else is holding out for the thing that you're holding on to? Someone is wanting the thing that you have to give, even if you don't even think it's a big deal. Like, what if there's a young girl or a young boy in our youth ministry whose life would be changed because you decided to serve or you just decided to listen to them? Like, what if by you making that apology to somebody, the person whose your relationship has been fractured, what if you making that apology, no matter how broken, how frail, or how imperfect, I wonder how much healing that would bring to them. And I wonder if by just taking the chance to compliment that person, or by voicing appreciation for the people in your life, or even just offering your time to listen to them, how that would make their life feel like it was so much more full of lightness rather than darkness. And I wonder, like, in your neighborhood, if that one family in your neighborhood, if they would be reached if you only invited them. There's a lot that we underestimate God with, but we underestimate ourselves too. We're like, oh, what I have to give him, it's of no importance to him. But I don't think he expects as much from us as we expect from us. I think that we feel like we have to do all these things. We have to be incredible. We have to give as much as we can. And it's like, yeah, and as much as you can isn't as much as you wish it was. And that's okay, because we're not always going to be in this part. So maybe for you, it's in your relationships that you need to give more of yourself to. I don't know what your thing is. That is between you and God. But this is the homework I want to give you for the rest of this week. We're coming up to Christmas. People call it the season of giving. I feel like buying Christmas presents is so stressful, so don't even consider it that way. Consider it as your own personal, spiritual, relational practice. And I want you to find one simple way to bless someone in your church family with what you already have. And as I pray over you this morning, I just want you to think, who is that person? Entertain the thought that you've kind of been like pushing back of like, okay, I don't really want to do that thing. And I just encourage you to entertain the thought. Just let it happen. You don't have to commit. But in this moment, I just want you to consider, like, what is that thing that God is pushing you towards? And when are you going to do it this week? Will you bow your heads and close your eyes with me? God, thank you so much for this morning. I thank you that every single person who came is here, that we've all come from our own wild lives, and that everyone's sick right now, and it's weird, and the holidays are difficult, but all of us are here because we care, because we know that you are good. God, I thank you that you don't demand high pressure from us. You don't demand for us to be the best. You don't demand for us to give you everything that we don't have. Thank you that we are enough as we are, and that all you want is for us to trust you, for us to contribute in the ways that we can, because it doesn't really matter what we give. It matters who we're giving it to. It matters that you're the one who is taking everything we have, and to you, you can make anything last as long as it needs to go as far as it needs to. And I pray that you would give us the courage to think about what we are supposed to give and who we're supposed to have these conversations with or this moment with. And I pray that we would have the courage to do so. God, we thank you and we love you. And it's in your name we pray.